But how is you're both former board members? Talk to me a little bit about how the New Hampshire retirement system is administered, who's on the board, and how that works.
No, the first thing I'd say about that is that it's a real concept in financial circles that you have a fiduciary responsibility when you are looking at other people's money. And in order to do that, the people that you're looking after the money for have to trust you. One of the advantages of having the board of directors with union members on it is that people who are members have a means of communicating with people on the board, and that board has total control over the money. So I think that's an important factor as to how you want a board to operate when you're talking about $5.9 billion.
Right. A lot of money.
Up until July 1st of this last year, the board was made up of a majority of people involved in the pension, the employees, and the legislature changed it. Now the employees only have 4 seats out of 13 on the board, so it's really run now by political appointees.
Well, I think that's a good point to transition to a little bit of a talk about what is the current funding status of the retirement system, and maybe if you guys can explain to me a little bit about why it's currently underfunded and sort of the history of that.
Well, terminal funding means that if every individual that had a stake in the plan were to be paid out today, so obviously, as we talked about, the money in the plan is derived from return on investment. So it's a 30-year outlook on the value of the plan, or my pension is over 30 years. But if you were to have to pay everybody today, it's about 59% terminal funding, which means it would give 59 cents on the dollar for everyone that had a claim to their pension.
But that's owed over the next 30 years.
Right.
Okay.
Legislatively, 4 years ago, the legislature realized there was a flaw in the funding mechanism. And probably going back to your original question, the system's underfunded for the following reasons. First and foremost, during the recession in the 90s, the legislature came up with an idea of how to have the employers contribute less to the system, but make it look like the system was more funded. So they underfunded the system for over 20 years. Second, the legislature, which decides on the level of benefits, decided to give COLAs, but they didn't want to raise the money through taxation, so they created a special account in which they took money out of the system to pay for the COLAs, to pay for medical benefits. And the third way that the system has become underfunded, we've had 2 major recessions in the last 12 years. But 2/3 of the underfunding of the system is primarily by the state not contributing the amount of money they need to put into the system.
Right. So I think you're talking about actions that the state has taken. Let's talk about the most recent piece of legislation that has a big impact on the retirement system. You guys know I'm talking about HB 2. What happened there, and what's some of the impact been for employees and employers?
Just a little bit before that, one of the problems with pensions has always been what I refer to as pension thieves. Because you're dealing with a huge amount of money, there are various ways that individuals can work to their own benefit or to the benefit of others to get into that value. For instance, Enron froze all of its retirement accounts the month before it went bankrupt so that the employees could not get their money out. So it's not uncommon to come up with schemes that appear to be good for pensions, but really aren't, and you have to be extremely careful in order to analyze them and make sure you don't get caught losing money.
Right.
And if we could just back up just a little bit, prior to this year, the legislature, with us working with them, came up with a plan to put the system insolvency in 30 years.
That's right.
And it was a very good plan. We just have to stick to it. Unfortunately, because we have 2-year cycles in the legislative branch, we have legislators that were newly elected that are not willing to allow the system to work itself out and have made some what we consider very poor decisions in House Bill 2 that changes the funding, it changes the years of service, it changes a whole bunch of things for both current and new hires.
It even goes worse. What they did is they realized at the state level that they did not want to contribute any more money into the system. And so what they did is they shifted that burden down onto the local communities. Local communities looked at this new burden and said, this will be difficult for us to do. So then they went back and they went to the employees and they raised the employee contribution rate significantly. So for Group 1, it was a 40% increase in the amount someone contributes. They added another 2%. They also added another 2% to Group 2, but because they pay a higher rate, it's less than 40%. What they also did is they changed the benefit for new hires and also for non-vested people. For new hires, when they changed the benefit, they are giving them a significantly lower benefit. They're now saying that mandatory retirement age is 65. There are significant penalties if you leave before 65. And they also shifted Group 2 so that there is an older retirement age.
Right, right. Well, I think that's a good review of HB2. Let's sort of move on to the main event here, so to speak, and talk a little bit about what's being debated right now in the legislature in Concord, and this idea of moving to a defined benefit, from a defined benefit that the current system is, to a defined contribution plan. If you guys can sort of explain to me what the difference is there between a defined benefit and defined contribution.
Basically, it's the difference between that $5.9 billion fund that will provide a known benefit when you retire. You know exactly how much you're going to get, and you know that it's going to stay the same every single year. So you can plan on your retirement. The defined, what they want to do now is go to a defined contribution where it's all of the risk is put back on the employee, and you're at the whims of the market changes without having any real ability to determine, when I retire in 30 years, here's what I'll be getting. Because it's all up to how the market is doing at the time you retire. And there are many people that have seen their 401ks or their mutual investments today. You look at what the value is this afternoon versus what it was 5 years ago. And we all know that those have lost a ton of money.
Absolutely.
And that's really the big difference, is that it's a known pension with a defined benefit.
Yeah. And so how would that impact, for instance, police and firefighters who aren't receiving Social Security? I mean, does that sort of put them at risk at the end of retirement? I mean, could we be looking at folks on, being forced to rely on social services?
It puts everyone at risk. And one of the things that the 2 recessions proved is the flaw in defined contribution plans, that it's only as good as the market. If you retire with a large sum of money during a period where the economy is good, and you've put that money in fixed instruments, then you have money for the rest of your life. If you retire, example, in 2008, when the market crashed, you lost 40% of your assets, and now you went from having $400,000 to significantly less.
Right. And so now,